100 grams of flowers on which butterflies sleep, 200 grams of tilda root, a handful of nagda dirt, 50 grams of rata claws, and the last thing is the hair of the person who enters into the contract. The girl was glad that the ingredients were simpler than she thought. She found the dirt of the nagda, which could not be reached, while inspecting the corner of the attic. It was risen Hakata, and she completely forgot about preparing for the herbal medicine lesson and realized this only late in the evening. When the local herbalists had already closed their doors, the girl remembered her aunt's attic. Her aunt, Layla Hakat. This is her only relative who became famous in the kingdom as a brilliant pharmacist. Layla went crazy and died at a young age, the year Risen came of age, and her things were still stored in the attic. Since her aunt was a brilliant apothecary, it was not difficult to find the necessary herbs. Another girl accidentally found her notebook. Among the recipes for potent reagents, she saw the same one, the dream communication reagent. The girl thought about it and read more about this reagent. Expected effect: the ability to discreetly contact spies from other countries. It looks like the girl's aunt developed it for military purposes. Risen had never even heard of such a reagent. Therefore, even if she tried it just once, no one but her would know about it. Limitation: single-use product if you want to establish a continuous connection. The girl decided that tomorrow she would give it to Daniel. In her mind, she promised her aunt that she would take the medicine just once. In any case, she never had a single opportunity to improve her relationship with Daniel. Result: you can enter the dream of the person who drank it. Risen would be glad to hold his hand at least once in a dream. At the academy, Daniel Latines Amatan studied martial arts with swords in pairs, and Risen watched this fight with her friend. The third prince of the kingdom of Amatan, Daniel Latinus Amatan III, was her longtime love. Risen's best friend Ash is Daniel's half-sister and they get along well. Her full name is Ash Sankara Amathan, and whenever she asks to visit Daniel, Risen can stick close to her like a shadow. However, it is obvious that the girl could not admit her feelings to Daniel, also because most crown princes and princesses marry for diplomatic purposes. Risen sat on the steps and sighed in frustration. Hey, I lost again as expected. Defeating Kaidan is not that easy. Is it possible to win like this every day? Risen Hakata and Caden Roos have been rivals since they strengthened at the same royal high school. They competed because they wanted to occupy the same place. They took turns taking first and second place since school. Both were novice researchers, so both teachers and classmates were interested in them. Since promotion to the top of the investigation department happens quickly, she didn't want to lose to Caden. Risen, this guy is becoming more and more like a monster. You need to work very hard to become the head of the investigative department, Daniel told her. Looking at Daniel, Risen thought that tonight in Daniel's dream, she would take his hand and tell him that she liked him. Even if in a dream, she will at least be able to try, and Daniel's subconscious will be able to tell what he thinks about her. If he says that she is a beautiful and smart girl, that will be great. Risen offered the guy a bottle of water, and Daniel, in a friendly manner, suggested that Caden drink some water first. And when he drank, the girl realized that she was in trouble. Caden filled the bottle with new water and handed it to Daniel. And Risen stood and looked in bewilderment at Caden and Daniel. Daniel asked Risen and Caden what was wrong with the two of them. Is it all because they are rivals? They both want to become bosses. We have different electives, we cannot be called rivals, Caden answered. And Risen tried to calm down because sleep was only for once. In any case, we will be colleagues and nothing can be done about the feeling of rivalry. Risen tried to speak like an angel, because Daniel was nearby. But the girl still wanted to prove herself in this exam and show others that she was better than Caden. She decided that she would try her best. Ash asked Risen why she didn't enroll in pharmacy. After all, she has good grades in herbal medicine. And besides, she is Layla's niece. The girl replied that she hated being in a locked laboratory. She is active, and therefore the investigation bureau is more suitable for her. Daniel was very curious about who would become the boss, so he suggested that they try to fight once, and Ash assumed that they were both going to hide their skills so that they could see each other during the investigation exam. Risen was upset that she wouldn't be able to get into Daniel's dream. Today she will just see Caden in her dreams, but tomorrow she will try again. Everything will be okay, right? For Caden, this is just one dream, Risen thought, but things turned out completely differently for them. The next morning, Risen woke up to the sound of her alarm clock. She couldn't believe she was in her room. After all, what happened in the dream was so realistic. That night, Having fallen asleep, the girl woke up and found herself standing in the training room. The space in a dream depends on the subconscious of the person who drank the potion. In that place, Caden was practicing for the general exam, and Risen was watching him. But he noticed her immediately. The girl decided to behave as naturally as possible in his dream. So she decided to fight Caden in his dream. But the result of such a battle was obvious. She lost. But he continued to hold her, hugging her from behind. Candle demanded that she give up, but she did not want to. Then he asked her not to move. Hugging her, he said that he could not hold back any longer. Risen didn't know and doubted, but his body was so hot. She asked if he had gone crazy, and Candle replied, "Are you against it?" And the ribbon fell from her hair to the floor. The girl was wondering why this happened, and no traces remained, which means it was really just a dream. She looked under the blanket. Now Risen didn't know what to do next, and how to look Caden in the eyes when they meet at the academy today. At the academy, the teacher told the students to decide by next week which of the 3 departments they want to get into, and next week the general exams will take place. Ash asked Risen where she would be enrolling. This was the first option, the Investigation Bureau. The second option was the Information Office, and the third option was the Medical Office, which she would immediately enroll in, and there was little point in even trying. While Risen was telling Ash that she likes to move and doesn't want to be locked up in a pharmacy lab, Caden sat behind her and stared at her. The guy was wondering why he dreamed about Risen Hakat. Of course, he understood that at his age it was normal to have such dreams. Why did she? This was the first time such a realistic character appeared in his dream. Although she is quite an attractive girl with a cute face and an interesting personality, he considered her a talented person competing with him for primacy. But he never thought of her that way because she was his rival. Plus, he knew she liked Daniel. Risen asked Ash if she was going to get married after graduation. She answered yes, but she would really like to be a person not from the royal family. Ash wanted to live a normal life in her country and do what she loved. Candle reflected that the fate of non-hereditary royal offspring is always an arranged marriage. But even so, Risen was in love with him. She looked at Daniel like that. She must not have been able to tell him that she liked him. Daniel, who was sitting nearby, called Candle to leave. Candle asked him to wait. He wanted to check something. When she passed by, he wanted to kiss her neck. She only appeared in his dream once, and he was already reacting like that. The guy couldn't understand why this was happening to him. Risen was preparing for the general exam that would be next week. She knew what she would do, but she still wanted to be the best. And her main opponent is Candle. Even if you use magic in battle, it will still be difficult to defeat him. Also this dream, the details of which popped up in her head. Who could possibly have such a strange dream? The girl was outraged that Candle had ruined everything for her. After all, she only wanted to meet Daniel once, at least in a dream, if not in reality. The current king originally had 2 wives, a queen and a mistress. The queen bore him 2 sons, William, the first prince, and Daniel, the third prince. Then, when the queen died, the king's mistress, Testy, took her place. Reuben, the child she gave birth to, is the second prince. And also from this royal family was Ash, the daughter of another queen who lived quietly without any special whims. Since William is healthy, attractive, and has a royal family name, he will be successful. And Daniel and Ash will be used for political purposes. Even if Daniel had never seen his chosen one, Risen still had enough reasons to hide his feelings. Risen really wanted Daniel to be an ordinary person. That's it. Today she won't be able to study anymore with such thoughts. It's better to do physical training. Hey, your time for personal use of the gym is over, now it's my turn, Risen shouted to Candle as she entered the training hall. Although he did not expect her to appear, he told her that she could use another room. The girl replied that everything was busy there. Risen needed a punching bag for training. She told Caden that all the punching bags in other gyms were occupied, and she began to train. They were alone in this room. In any case, the girl didn't care. But she was very worried about the fact that she once appeared in his dream. While Candle was training, Risen noticed that he had broad shoulders. She scolded herself for this thought because she likes Daniel and should not be distracted by anyone. But still, Risen thought that it was normal for him to have such dreams. The girl was about to straighten her hair and tie her ponytail, and Candle looked at her without looking away. Risen decided to ask Caden if he would go to the Investigation Bureau. He answered yes. Then the girl said that she also submitted her first application there. Caden replied that he heard about it from Daniel. It seemed to her that the guy was more indifferent than usual, and far from the need to talk. After training, Risen and Kaidan discussed studies, books, and training. Then the girl was about to leave and he stopped her. The guy warned her that if she went to the investigation bureau, she would have to see a lot of unpleasant things. And he asked why apply there. Risen was outraged by this. She told him that being female does not mean that she will not be able to withstand all this. She also asked if he thought she would be a burden when working with him. Kaidan replied that she is hardworking and cannot become a burden to anyone. The girl reminded him that they were hard workers and had the same grades. The guy replied that he just likes to move and gets good grades without straining. Then Risen said goodbye and reminded that they would meet at the comprehensive exam. After all, those who submit documents to the investigation bureau compete with each other. I will definitely try and defeat you, Risen said to Candle goodbye. He replied, okay, see you in the exam, and looked after her, admiring. Where am I? Risen thought. It was very green all around and there was a stream running. Is this the capital of the kingdom of Ametan? But this is not at all like Amenity. She decided to walk further, and the girl saw a guy who was visiting the graves of his parents. On the graves there was the surname Russ. That's Kaidan's last name. Yes, it was him, although a little younger. Kaidan told his parents that he would definitely join the investigation bureau. Risen remembered that he has an older brother, and she heard that he will now inherit the estate. This means that these graves belong to the lords of the province of Rus, Kaidan's parents. The guy put a bouquet of roses and a letter on the grave. It was a pass to the Royal High School. Having put down the pass, he said, I will definitely find out everything. Kaidan noticed Risen as she reflected that her graduation from Royal High School was 5 years ago. So Kaidan is 17 years old here. Risen came up to him, sat down next to him and began to calm him down. She told him that she also lost her aunt, who was like mom and dad to her, and then it seemed to her that the world was collapsing. Every day was incredibly painful for her, but somehow she survived, and he will be fine. He looked as if he had already seen everything in his life. Why is this so sad? Risen hugged Kaidan tenderly. She wanted to support him so much. You will go to Amenity and make a lot of good friends, and you will definitely end up in the investigation bureau, Risen said in his ear, hugging him. Kaidan thanked the girl for her concern and stroked her face with his hand. Why did my heart suddenly beat so hard? Risen thought. But why does Kaidan kiss me as if I'm the most precious thing in the world to him? The girl was at a loss. When Risen was awakened, she did not understand why Kaidan appeared in her dream again. After all, it was said that the potion was disposable. It turns out that Risen dreamed about him just like that. The memory of last night was very clear, and it was just a dream. The girl walked along the corridor of the academy and thought that Kaidan visited her too often in her dreams. Because of this, all her thoughts are only about him. Isn't this Ash's bag? Daniel asked her with a beaming smile, and he offered to carry Ash's heavy bag, which Risen was carrying. Risen went to the cafeteria and Ash went to turn in her law homework. Then Daniel suggested going to the dining room and waiting for her there. The girls said that today there will be a lot of people in the dining room, since after dessert they serve 5 types of fruit pudding. Then the guy said that they needed to hurry. It's worth going early to try all 5 types of pudding. Ash will still be a little late. Daniel asked him and Kaidan to stand in line for food while he went to buy tickets for the food. You like to give up, she heard from Kaidan. Then the girl asked what he meant. He replied that next year Daniel would be a married man. If you close your heart, you will only feel pain. This guy is all alone and doesn't care about the throne, so he won't have a mistress, Kaidan continued. I know, Risen replied. Then Kaidan suggested that she surrender. After all, this is not the person who will look at such a thing as love. Risen didn't understand what it meant to give up. It's not like she's tried anything, and Daniel doesn't like her either. Candel asked what she was going to do. She was going to leave everything as it was. Yes, she liked him, but what can she do? There is nothing wrong with unrequited love. Daniel will not be burdened by these feelings. Risen said that she just wants to keep her heart. She explained to Candel what this meant. When their studies are over and they start working individually, other people will appear. And when he leaves her sight, she will fall in love with someone. Until then, she will try hard to remember him and love him with all her heart. Risen went to the library. She found a book about the year 2170 according to the royal calendar. She was interested in the 5th of April 2170. No matter how much the girl thinks about it, There is something strange in the fact that she dreamed of Caden 2 nights in a row. They decided to check something. She was very surprised when she read that more than 100 people died on April 5th. This was a list that included only nobles. Usually they contain no more than 2 or 3 names. And this is the day that Daniel's mother, Queen Suzanne, died. It was the anniversary of Queen Susanna and the day of the completion ceremony of the Harem Palace, a villa in the West. On behalf of the king, who was then employed as a representative, the queen went. The lords gathered for her sake and held a banquet. Then a fire broke out and everyone died. Russ' territory should be in the West. Caden's parents were also present at the banquet. Then the girl was shocked by what she read in the book. Albert Russ and Natalie Russ died on April 5, 2170. She definitely could not find out the names of Caden's parents and the date of their death. In a dream she had by chance, so it was his dream. Well, how can that be? After all, the instructions said that she would fall into a dream only once. Maybe the potion wears off slowly, then everything will be okay tonight. Caden was lying on the bed half naked and Risen was sitting next to him. You again? The guy asked, looking at her carefully. Risen sweetly replied, Yeah, it was Caden's dorm room. As expected, she fell into his dream again, there was no doubt about it. The girl saw the photographs on the shelf. There was Candle with Daniel on one and Candle with his parents on the other. The guy said that in the photo he and Daniel were 3 years ago. He didn't think he'd become friends with anyone, but he became close with this guy. Risen asked if it was because Daniel was nice and kind. Candle replied, Does he look like that? Simply because there was no choice with whom to be friends. Candle laid Risen on his bed and looked into her eyes, hugging her waist. The girl thought that grief had brought them together. On April 5th, the accident occurred in which Caden's parents and Daniel's mother died, and soon they all went to the same school. Now it seems all strong emotions are forgotten, and only cold anger remains. Caden twirled her long hair around his fingers. He asked Risen why she was silent when he talked about Daniel. Risen said since he is sad he can let her go, but the guy decided not to let her go. It's still just a dream, isn't it? Caden asked and leaned over her, about to kiss her. Caden, no, first kiss. The girl got out. Risen, you still can't do this to Daniel. Caden whispered, holding her chin with his hand. Then the girl gave up and wrapped her arm around his naked torso. He kissed her. Risen Hakat, tell me you want this too. Caden whispered to her. Why didn't it all end in one day? Risen was indignant, running into her aunt's office. She mentally scolded her aunt for such a recipe. The girl decided to double-check all the ingredients, and she immediately found the mistake. She added a handful of dirt not nowhere. The nameplate was old and she thought it was the ingredient. What to do now? If at least one ingredient is incorrect or the proportion is calculated incorrectly, various symptoms or side effects may appear, and she added dirt to nowhere instead of dirt to nowhere. And now the restriction on the one-time effect has been removed. The girl was thinking how she could fix everything, and Risen remembered how her aunt said that every medicine should have an antidote. This was at least something that could help her. And since pharmaceutical science is an artificial science, even a return to its natural state is considered completion. Her aunt could do whatever she set her mind to as long as it involved medications. However, she could not create antidotes, so she was unable to start production. It's not for nothing that all these notebooks remained just notes. Auntie had many ideas for producing excellent medicines, but she was never able to create an antidote to them. Even she, a pharmaceutical genius, could not correct the situation. What to say about her herself then? In the evening, Risen decided to go in for sports. Caden was working out as usual in the same gym with Pears. He wondered if Risen would come to train. He could not forget that he had been dreaming about his rival for 3 nights in a row. This was also a dream about the time of his youth. Parents' funeral. Then, at 17 years old, no one consoled him. The Russ estate instantly lost its owner and was taken over by his older brother at the age of 19. We've all had crazy days. That is why his older brother did not console the 17-year-old youth, who was quiet and thoughtful. If this had been an ordinary dream, that day would have been completely different. But Risen sincerely consoled him, stroked him and hugged him. The feeling was overwhelming. Risen finished training in another room and went to the library. Caden entered the library and noticed her. Her books were not like textbooks. He was interested in what she was reading. For 5 years, he had never been interested in girls. but she began to catch his eye by appearing to him in his dreams for 3 nights. Risen searched, but could not find even a phrase that mentioned the potion with which dreams are associated. She put off studying for her exams for this, but it wasn't worth it. The girl noticed that many people appeared in the library, but she definitely didn't expect to see Kaidan in the library at such a time. Until now, her thoughts were only about Daniel. But when she saw Kaidan in her dream, she understood why so many girls were attracted to him. He is handsome, good at sports and studies. Despite some coldness and arrogance, you want to hug him tightly. And for some reason, there is deep sadness in these eyes. And that black hair looks so elegant. Risen scolded herself for all the lewd thoughts towards Kaidan. She wanted to be with Daniel. Fortunately, my father overcame his critical condition. Recently, attacks have been happening more and more often. The disease is getting the better of him, his older brother told Daniel. It's good that William, Daniel's older brother, has been involved in politics since childhood. He and his brother decided to discuss the issue of succession to the throne. Testi, being a politically savvy woman, will not stand aside. She achieved power with the help of the cabinet and the aristocracy. She became an empress. But her main problem was that Daniel knew about her true desires. Every woman in the harem dreams of her son becoming emperor. Still, she doesn't have much power. Although Amiton is independent, the brothers will not be able to just oversee the empire with such military power. Daniel told William when he took the throne he should do more research. After all, he himself knows what they are talking about in the Western Palace. Much time has passed, but there are still victims, including them. William said it would be nice if his father held on a little longer, at least until she and Ash graduate. He would really like to see their wedding. And Testi sat over the bed like a king and asked him to hold out a little longer, saying, "Not yet." The next day, while Risen was studying in the library, Kaidan ran in and shouted her name. Did he really understand everything about the dream? Risen thought, and he swore that she submitted her application to the pharmaceutical department. He was indignant that she told him that she wanted to join the investigation department, and then suddenly the pharmaceutical department. When Risen realized that he was angry because of this, she suggested that they go outside to talk. They went out. It was a cool evening outside. All this fuss turned out to be because she wrote a statement to the pharmaceutical department. Kaidan thought she would choose the investigations department. The guy asked why she finally settled on pharmaceuticals. Well, I wish she had thought about this earlier. But for 5 years she wanted to get into the investigation bureau. From somewhere, suddenly, a week before graduating from the academy, pharmaceuticals appeared. Risen responded that people tend to change. Remembering her Aunt Layla, the girl said that she decided to follow in her footsteps. Kaidan didn't believe her and said she was lying. After all, Professor Saphael suggested that she go into pharmacy so many times, but she constantly refused under the pretext that she was not as talented as her aunt. Risen said that Kaidan is an eccentric and does not understand his capabilities. After all, if she is not in the investigation department, then he will be the best there. The girl asked why then he was preventing such a good arrangement. Kaidan told her that they really wanted to be the best, but he wanted to fight with her. All this time, since school, they competed. They vied with each other for the top spot in the rankings, but never really competed properly. And if we completely forget about the race, then working together wouldn't be so bad. He didn't know what her circumstances were. Therefore, he suggested that she go into the investigation, adding that this would be good motivation for him. The girl apologized and said that she learned something while leafing through the books, and she needs to finish one thing. This case is much more important than her dream job. After all, drugs that have a long-term effect on the body often shorten life expectancy if you do not take the antidote within a year. And she gave Kaidan a potion with exactly this effect. And now Risen simply must make an antidote within this year. She was very sorry that she could not go to the investigation department. She simply had no choice but to become a pharmacist. Since she started this mess, she should sort it out. Risen said, "No matter how many years it takes, even if it takes forever. It all started because of me, so I have to put an end to it." Kaidan grabbed the girl's hand and asked what was the matter. Why does she choose a career that she doesn't like at all? He was worried about her and offered her his help. She replied that he could not help her, but she can handle it herself if she tries. And for some reason she wanted to tell him something personal that she had never told anyone. Her mother died while giving birth to her. Dad was disgusted to even look at her, so he gave her under the care of her aunt and went to a monastery. This is how she ruined 2 lives at once from birth. Therefore, her aunt taught her to live more diligently than others and take every day as a gift. Her birth was a great sacrifice compared to other people. So she promised herself not to waste her life. That's how diligent she was. That's why she would never give up. And in the pharmaceutical department, he will work as hard as he can. Risen lied that becoming an investigator was not that important to her. Moreover, various chemicals are found in crimes. Their two departments are closely related. Caden called her a fool because she continues to love a man with whom nothing will work out for her. She will also put all her effort into a job that she doesn't even like. Then Risen replied, "Anyway, if you need a pharmacist, let me know." She said that she would definitely help with any questions he had. Although the girl still liked Daniel, she would never forget that cool night when she and Caden discussed their future. At graduation, Ash stood with Daniel and did not understand why Risen and Kaidan were not going. Meanwhile, they were hugging behind the wall at the end of the corridor. After the second night, Risen knew that she would end up in Kaidan's dream. Because of today's rehearsal, the background of this dream turned out to be graduation. Caden tried to kiss the girl and said that after today they would no longer wear the same uniform. And she gave up. The guy kissed Risen and said that he wanted them to go to the investigation bureau together. He promised that they would become good colleagues. Caden also told her that he would miss her, because she listened carefully to the lessons at this school, and they competed for first and second place. And also, Risen, you really are very beautiful when you play sports. Therefore, in fact, Caden didn't have time to finish when Risen's alarm clock rang. The girl woke up and thought about his words, whether they were sincere. She decided that in his sleep he spoke unconsciously. But now they will be in different departments and will not see each other unless something special happens. Risen caught herself thinking that she would miss him too. Compared to the dream, the graduation passed calmly without any incidents. And starting tomorrow, everyone will start working in their own department. Risen thought that a good memory would be that she went to the same school as Daniel, with her unrequited love. It also seems that she will miss her rival, who was always by her side. Now everyone has their own path and career. Two friends, Daniel and Caden, were sitting in a gazebo on the street and drinking tea. Caden said that there is a lot of work in the investigation bureau, and he can't sleep or exercise. Daniel replied that the boss deliberately piled on the work so that he could be promoted. Caden said that he thinks he knows what happened in Amadan, even that the son of the lord who owns the local land cheated. But such incidents can be part of a larger conspiracy and need to be pieced together. Daniel asked him to take his time and not worry. Caden asked a friend when he was getting married. He replied that there were as many as 12 princesses from which to choose. Although the parents have not yet decided on the candidate, one way or another, the ceremony will take place next month. And with Ash, it was even more confusing. Initially, she was going to go to the desert kingdom of Hansim, but at the same time she received an offer from the Empire, possibly in the form of the Emperor's concubine. If Ash takes this position, she will be treated the same as William. And if everything ends, then his marriage will be postponed. But this is nothing compared to the royal wedding. Daniel inquired about Caden's personal life and asked why he didn't start dating someone. As always, this topic was the most interesting. Caden replied that he did not have time for a relationship, and a friend reminded him that in the investigation bureau, many bosses are lonely because of their work. Then Daniel offered to introduce him to a beautiful aristocrat. Caden refused and said that he would rather go to bed. Before leaving, Caden told Daniel that only a wizard could have caused such a fire, and he gave him a list of wizards who died a year after the fire. The peculiarity was that they died from the same symptoms, sudden death due to backflow of magic. Caden said that the investigation bureau can only view certain records of the royal palace, and asked Daniel to gain access and find records about these wizards in the royal palace. Daniel remembered that while he was talking about death, he continued to perform his duties. So there was no need to worry about Kaidan. With such skills, he can safely start dating any girl. The girls sat and drank tea in the palace. Ash's brother William was due to arrive soon because of her wedding. Ash was upset that Risen didn't call her by name at the castle. Risen asked that not following formalities could harm Ash's reputation. The girl believed that etiquette must be observed when communicating with a member of the royal family. Ash really didn't want to get used to it. She thanked Risen for the book she brought. Risen asked why she needed a book and empire on herbology. Then Ash told about the offer to go to the Empire and become the Emperor's concubine. William wants her to leave, and Ash was thinking about what kind of power a concubine of a small country could have. Just like her mother, Live and be afraid that you will be replaced by Testi. Risen answered why Ash thinks Amiten and the Empire are the same. Moreover, if the Emperor gives preference to Her Highness, then she will have incomparable power in her hands. But Ash decided to go to the Empire if it would add strength to William as a ruler. She could no longer look at Testi and her son, and he shouldn't become king. Ash informed Risen that Daniel might also be getting married next month. He will marry one of the Emperor's younger sisters, and Daniel believes that she should give strength to William. Ash apologized to Risen. After all, she knew that she liked Daniel. Ash admitted that she saw her crush on Daniel but never discussed it with her. I just took her with me to meetings with him. She believed that then it was necessary to listen to her friend, find out what was bothering her, console her, and be sad with her. But Ash didn't do anything then. Risen said she made a wise decision, just helping a friend be close to her unrequited love. She was happy. At that moment, a maid ran into the room and said that the king had died. The girls stood shocked and wondered what would happen next. Caden brought Risen to the pharmaceutical department with the conclusion of medical experts. Experts concluded that this was not drug-assisted murder, and Risen in the pharmaceutical department checked all possible reactions to the reagent in the body and found nothing. This means there was no poison in the body. In general, he died of natural causes. The death of the king at this time was not beneficial to anyone. The next contender for the throne is William. He has an ironclad alibi, and the prince's servants are not so ambitious as to plan such a thing. He died before he dethroned William. Testi and Reuben panic. Caden asked Risen how things were going in her business, which she was going to complete in pharmaceuticals. She replied that she needed to deal with him as soon as possible, but there is a lot of work in the pharmaceutical hotel now, so she cannot do her business. Caden replied that everything was clear from her face. The most terrible life. The guy remembered that they had not talked to her for so long, and what good times they had at school. He also mentioned that he dreamed about her last night, probably because they were going to meet today. When the girl asked what exactly he dreamed about, he replied that he no longer remembered. The girl breathed out a sigh of relief. They were about to say goodbye when Jid in a white robe entered their office. He informed them that Prince William had died a few hours after the king's death. The couple stood in shock, and he told them that in a hurry the laboratory tested the reagent and it turned out to be positive. Risen suggested that there was then a possibility of drug-assisted murder. Jid said that therefore it is urgent to detain the suspect, and this is Princess Ash. Then Risen remembered Ash's words about William wanting her to leave, about how she would help him become stronger. And the girl fell to the floor on her knees. Caden rushed towards her, and Risen said what Ash said. She reminded him that it was this morning. Risen really asked him to let Caden solve this case. Risen came to Ash and Daniel at the castle. Ash was very happy to see her. Professor Saphael was with her. She was the head of the pharmaceutical department. Saphael said that they should take her saliva and blood for tests. Ash asked if Reuben would now become king. She was told that if things continued like this, he would become king, just as William should have become. And this is what Queen Testi really wants. Ash and Daniel were in a very disadvantageous position, but they had to try to do something. There was an urgent meeting of the cabinet and aristocrats this morning. They want to declare a period of doubt. This means that the succession to the throne can be prevented. One member of the royal family must make a statement, and more than half of the nobles must vote yes. There were many on Testi's side, but William's death was a sudden blow to everyone, so they may get more than half the votes. Ash hugged Daniel and told him that he knew what choice she would make. She will declare him king and will be removed from the list of heirs. He must definitely become king. The guy agreed, although he had no intention of becoming king before. For Risen, this was good news, because then his engagement would end on its own. Professor Saphael told Risen, "Don't think that the princess is innocent if you were friends at school. She's just a powerful suspect. You need to understand that in the pharmaceutical department, everything is based only on facts. When it comes to creating anything, there is a slight difference between tea and medicine." Risen defended Princess Ash, explaining that she had a good relationship with Prince William. The professor said that she would work and understand that anything can happen. After going through all the difficulties and gaining valuable experience, you learn that words can be wrong. I didn't suspect that Layla... Saphael did not finish. Layla, my aunt? Risen thought. I didn't think she would die like that. That such a smart person would go crazy, said Professor Saphael and hurried Risen. The girl was sure that she was hiding something about her aunt. Risen had heard that they were the best colleagues in the pharmaceutical department. What is she hiding? That tea, the problem was the drink he drank in the morning. Things get more complicated if every unique reaction to an ingredient turns out to be positive. At least it turns out that Prince William didn't die after drinking that tea. But if the princess really is a criminal, she could drink the antidote. Wait, the tea you are talking about. I drank it too, even this morning. Please check me too. Risen asked Professor Saphael. There is a magic in the pharmaceutical department that does not allow the antidote to pass through. Therefore, if someone were sent, they would have to come out to take the antidote. And Risen was at the department all day today. Initially, I had no objections to Reuben's candidacy for the role of king, but everyone recognizes that the events that took place are very unusual. A healthy William died that night. Furthermore, according to the pharmaceutical department, it was a homicide by an unknown reagent. I have a lot of doubts. Therefore, as a member of the royal family, I am going to announce a temporary period of doubt. You know that I am as much a contender for the throne as my brother Reuben. Following William, I would like to investigate the series of these events. Daniel spoke at a meeting of the cabinet of ministers and aristocrats. A period of doubt occurs when doubts arise regarding the identity of the heir. Then the transfer of power is postponed. At this time, pretenders to the throne must provide evidence why another person cannot become king. In the meeting hall, they said that since the majority voted for, then a period of doubt would apply for 2 months. I, Reuben Sisef Amatan, second prince and pretender to the throne. Initially, I was the heir, so I will ascend to the throne if no circumstances prevent this, Reuben said. I, Daniel Latines Amatan, the third prince during the period of doubt, have the right to be the heir to the throne. Daniel made a response speech. The king will be determined by popular vote at the last meeting, where not only aristocrats will be present, but also vassals of each state, as well as landowners. I, Ash Sankara Amatan, renounce my right to inherit the throne and declare my support for Daniel. I've always been on William's side, Ash said. Testi thought, what a cunning girl. And Reuben told his mother that Ash was still the main suspect. The girl will not have a stylish influence on the decision of the meeting. They were informed that, according to the pharmaceutical department, her innocence would be proven within a day. One of the department employees has a close relationship with the princess, and she drank the same tea as Prince William. Testi was outraged. She was informed that pharmaceutical department employees were not covered by the antidote. This will prove that the tea the princess drank was not sent. Testi ordered to find out everything about this employee. Risen, meanwhile, recalled that her aunt was thinking about many reagents, a potion to enhance magic. If she really developed it, it would be worthy of summoning the mages. We need to work even harder to leave a legacy behind, Risen thought, and I didn't even notice how I fell asleep. When she opened her eyes, Kaydan was sitting next to her. She thought it was a vision because there was no one in the empty compartment except the two of them. But if this is a dream, then the background of her laboratory was too realistic. Risen thought she was crazy for thinking such a thing. Kaydan was surprised that she was alone in the laboratory, although he also stayed in the investigation department for a long time today because of this incident. When the guy asked Risen why she was still here, she replied that she was studying something for personal purposes. He immediately understood what business she was talking about, but he still insisted that they needed some rest. Risen replied that if you find excuses for yourself every day, then the end will never come. This is a problem of willpower. Even if you fail in the end, you can't have any regrets. He used to think that she was obsessed with achievements, but the more he watched her, the more he realized that she was not thinking as positively as she seemed. And its driving force is not success, but failure. Instead of achieving success, she is ready to live life without regrets, even if she fails. Risen liked Danielle, even though she had no chance of success. By the way, why are you here? Risen asked. Kaydan replied that he came because of the investigation and was surprised that there was at least someone here, but she was sleeping too soundly. Then he sat down at the table, took paper and pen. Kaydan began asking Risen about that day. So did you have tea with the princess? He began. Yes, Prince William left before me. The tea was already brewed, the girl answered. Then he asked how long she had been there. It was about half an hour. Kaydan then asked what they were talking about. She replied about the engagement, about Ash possibly leaving, about how the princess missed their past conversations. The guy said that this was not enough for half an hour. Risen was contemplating whether to speak or not. Caden said she's the most important alibi for a possible suspect right now. Then Risen spoke about how she liked Prince Daniel at the academy, and the princess asked for forgiveness for pretending that she did not know about it. Ash said that she regrets that she could not listen to me, comfort me, and be sad together. That's really all. Then we heard that the king had passed away, Risen said. For some reason the girl could not look him in the eyes. Caden said okay, and that it was time for him to go. Then Risen offered to drink coffee for him. The coffee prepared in the pharmaceutical department was very tasty, and Caden couldn't refuse it. Risen joked that he would now always ask her for this drink. Caden just kept answering, okay. That's why she couldn't make friends with him these 5 years, because he said so little from the beginning. But as he was leaving, Caden turned around and told the girl that Daniel had broken off his engagement. But Risen knew that he would still marry after the period of doubt had passed. Caden replied that if Reuben became king, Daniel would not allow himself to be used for political purposes. But if Daniel becomes king, then... Risen did not want to listen further and he left. Walking down the corridor, Caden thought that he had not volunteered for the investigation for this conversation. But he could not forget what he saw when he entered the office. The table is in complete disarray. The robe is too big for her build. Her curly hair is on top of the documents. Risen again did not understand whether this was a dream or not. It was night outside. He and Caden were sitting at the table in the office and discussing the big fire that happened 5 years ago. A large fire that left no traces could only be created with the help of magic. But they did not know a wizard of this level. The flame created by magic is weak, but once it flares up it is very difficult to put it out. The problem is how it was possible to set fire to a huge castle. The investigation reached a dead end, and then King Zathelfan ordered the Investigation Bureau not to carry out further investigations. Otherwise, the Queen's place would be empty. In the secret records of the Bureau of Investigation, there is a testimony from a maid of the royal palace, which states that Testi wanted to become queen and was putting pressure on King Zathelfan. Caden told Risen that if you look out of this window you can see Queen Testi's palace. Everyone in the castle suspects that she was behind the fire. Since the king favored her, she did not pay attention to suspicions. Just think, the woman who killed over 100 innocent lives is now a queen. Caden admitted that when he feels anxious and feels like he's at a dead end, no matter how much he searches, he stands here and looks out the window. Risen approached him, and he hugged her from behind and said that the funny thing is that you can see the pharmaceutical department from here. When I look at the Queen's palace, I start to get angry again. But having seen only the building of the pharmaceutical department, I feel a surge of energy again, admitted Caden. I don't know what some idiot is doing there, but she's definitely working hard on something, the guy continued. Risen asked to let her go. Caden reminded her that she had given up on the Investigation Bureau and asked what he should do now. After all, she promised him to do everything possible so as not to regret, and these words became an incentive for him. Then out of the blue, he asked why she liked Daniel. Does she want to be with him as much as she is now? Caden asked that in his arms she would think only about him and no one else. Risen didn't understand why she couldn't say no to him. Risen's alarm rang and she was angry that she couldn't answer anything in her sleep. After all, it was his subconscious. She thought about what a pervert Caden really is, and during the investigation he puts on a menacing face. The girl could not understand why this bothered her so much. Prince Daniel discussed William's sudden death with a representative from the Bureau of Investigation. The prince said the Investigation Bureau only has the main lead each time. The man replied that the Investigation Bureau was avoiding identifying the perpetrators and further investigation. It is difficult to see the truth when there are prejudices. Daniel assumed that Queen Testi and brother Reuben were behind this, and officially asked the Bureau of Investigation to prepare a written statement and report on the murder of William, so that this can be presented as evidence at the last court hearing. And he asked that Caden Roos be assigned to this case. Daniel asked him to help Caden in the investigation. He replied that the Bureau always tries to reveal the truth, and judging is the job of aristocrats. When Daniel and Caden met, the prince announced that the Investigation Bureau would become busier. Because he asked permission for an official investigation, Caden responded that William's death needed to be investigated urgently, because if Reuben becomes king, he will stop the investigation, like then with the fire. The guy said that even if they remain objective in the face of the truth, the Bureau is the primary department of the royal palace and obeys the orders of the government. Daniel told his friend that he checked his list with the records of the wizards who went to the palace. While Testy was a concubine, a magician often visited her. It was the woman Catherine, Testy's younger cousin. She owns a small shop of magic elixirs. The strange thing was that she was a very rich woman. Daniel saw her several times at the ball wearing expensive jewelry. Caden promised to find out about Catherine. Daniel really wanted to reveal everything at the last court hearing, and about William's death and that terrible fire. Daniel had a feeling that something would happen if they put this off. "We need to act immediately." Caden agreed with him. Caden asked Daniel where they were going now. He replied that they were heading to the pharmaceutical department. "You need to submit an official request for an investigation there too." The guy thought that his bureau would cooperate with the pharmaceutical department. He himself did not expect, as he told Daniel, that he did not have to go there. After all, they simply provide research results. But Daniel wanted to say this personally and at the same time visit Risen. Caden remembered how in a dream he asked her to think only about him. And now that Daniel was free, he realized that he had a rival who she liked. But he remembered how he decided to live without distractions until he revealed the truth and took revenge. Until then, he will risk his life and everything else. At this time in the palace, a photograph of Risen was brought to Queen Testy. The messenger said that this was the same friend of the princess, and also the niece of Layla Hakat. And every free minute in the pharmaceutical department, she begins to look for all her aunt's research. These are not only records about them, but also all kinds of textbooks, notebooks, as well as her personal materials. Then the queen ordered to get rid of all research. But the guy replied that the pharmaceutical department was a secondary institution, unlike the investigation bureau, and did not obey the orders of the royal palace. Therefore, records cannot be seized. And since the department is a place of research and these records can serve as future research, they should never be disposed of. Especially due to Layla's rare abilities, all data is going to be carefully stored, and no one will do this. The queen said that once Reuben ascends the throne, there will be pressure on organizations associated with the kingdom. She was sure that the girl suspected something. Testy ordered to continue surveillance, and the messenger told her that Prince Daniel had now gone to visit her. The queen decided that they could just be friends, but the guy said that the biggest problem is the guy in the photo. The queen recognized him. It was Caden Russ. He said he was Daniel's best friend, and he said that there was a report about a fire 6 years ago that said it was under investigation. The queen realized that this was not good. Ash and Risen are close, and Daniel is closely related to this guy, so there is definitely some connection between Layla's niece and the Russ family's investigative officer. That's right, the messenger confirmed her words. Prince Daniel took Caden with him to her. The queen ordered to watch them carefully. Daniel is still a newbie and his every step is predictable. Let's get rid of it gradually. We have been preparing to take the throne for too long. He won't learn in 2 months, said the queen. Professor Saphael scolded Daniel for causing His Majesty trouble by visiting the pharmaceutical department. He replied that he didn't know it was impolite. She continued that this is the ethic followed by government-affiliated organizations. And in such cases, the pharmaceutical department consults with the investigation bureau. The professor said that the purpose of creating the pharmaceutical department is to develop new elixirs and combat various illegal drugs. Daniel became upset, thinking that it was probably due to Layla's influence that he thought the pharmaceutical department used to be friendly. But the professor said that researchers should only study and no sympathy. You need to work without contact with the royal family. She said that she would understand him. And he left the office dejected, realizing that he was not aware of the entire state of affairs. Due to his irresponsibility and ignorance of the duties of a prince, the actions he performed before are now burdensome to those around him. The prince remembered Kaiden's words not to go to the laboratory, and thought that he should have listened to him. When Daniel saw his friends, he became more cheerful. They sat on a bench and didn't talk at all. Daniel asked them why they hadn't gotten closer yet. Risen jumped up and greeted him. Daniel asked her not to greet him so formally, to be simpler. Risen apologized for not yet offering him her condolences. The prince replied that there was no time to be sad. It will be possible to grieve after the last court hearing. In fact, he himself had not yet realized that William had died. He thanked Risen for releasing Ash and dropping the charges. The girl thought, but Ash would still have to live in the palace. As Daniel thanked her, she looked at Caden and remembered his words. Would she want to do this to Daniel? Daniel told Risen how he often walked through this park with Ash and Layla. and he asked the girl about one favor that she could do for him. Risen visited her aunt's grave near the monastery. Seeing the monastery, she always remembered how her aunt took her there to see her dad. Each time, little Risen remembered her father as a man who abandoned his child. And seeing her sad face when the girl was 10 years old, her aunt stopped taking her to him. After that, Risen never visited her father. He only confirmed his existence by sending paintings of flowers to his aunt's grave. But now there was a bouquet of red roses on my aunt's grave, and she didn't like roses because of the thorns. And most of all, she didn't like the red ones because of their bloody color. The girl told her about her work, about the fact that she was busy to death, about the fact that it was difficult for her to make out her aunt's handwriting, and about the fact that she urgently needs to create an antidote, but she can't do it. Although she has already accomplished a lot, and also about the riots in the palace. She even talked about a guy she likes, but it's very difficult to be with him. And about Daniel, who will soon become king. In the end, Risen thanked her aunt for raising her so well. She remembers her love and goes to the end, no matter how hard it is ahead. Risen decided that as soon as she prepared the antidote, she would go on a long vacation, and he will think about living well. The girl thanked out loud the person who brought these flowers for his care, even though her aunt didn't like them, and said goodbye to my aunt until next year. As Risen walked to work, Daniel called out to her. She didn't expect to see him at all, and she had her hair tied up and glasses on her eyes because she was tired. The prince said that he was just walking around the palace and somehow accidentally reached the pharmaceutical department. The girl thought it was suspicious. He had never walked like that before, and he invited her to take a walk. Daniel asked Risen how big of a flame she could create. After all, she chose magic as a subject at the academy. She replied that it was very small and showed it to him. Her magical power has decreased, so the flame cannot flare up. Daniel asked that the problem is not with the magician's abilities, but with his magical power. And if there is a lot of this force, then you can create a large flame. Risen replied that magical power is the ability to store magic in its natural state and use it. In theory, it is possible to create a large flame. But how can you collect so much magic without power? This would be possible if there was a potion that enhanced magical power. Daniel thanked Risen for the information and offered to take her to the pharmaceutical department. And she replied that she was glad to help him. The girl noticed that he came to her in person, and the prince replied to this that Caden had gone on a business trip, so he had to come alone. When Risen heard Caden's name, she thought that he was too busy and didn't sleep well, and therefore he has not appeared in her dreams for several days. She was worried about him. Daniel asked if it was possible that there could be a potion that enhances magical powers. Risen replied that she didn't know for sure, but it was probably possible. Magic power is very dangerous. In her aunt's notebooks, she saw many experiments that were not successful. They had different side effects, but even if her aunt failed, the others didn't even get closer to the goal. Daniel thanked Risen for the information. Risen wished Daniel good luck and strength to survive all this, and he replied that her Aunt Layla would definitely be proud of her if she were watching from heaven. Daniel then asked Risen if she remembered the day they first met. All those moments won't happen again. Daniel wishes he could go back to a time when he had no obligations, when everyone was alive and no one held a grudge against them. He would do anything for this. The prince asked the girl if there was a potion that could turn back time. She replied that no, but she would definitely look. At 13, her aunt was still cool until she went crazy, and the palace she saw for the first time was amazing. At that moment, she didn't know that being an adult was so difficult. Professor Saphael scolded Risen for talking to the prince and for not being at her workplace yet. The boss said that she knew that the girl dreamed of working in the investigation department, but now she works in the pharmaceutical department. The moment magic disappeared, botany became the personification of power in the world. The department is engaged in the most dangerous and exciting case, and therefore the department has no reason to interfere in the affairs of the royal palace, and Risen must treat everything impartially. Professor Saphael said that the girl should leave high-profile cases to the investigation department, and she reminded that their friendly relations with the prince were in the past, and they can no longer be friends as before, much less trust each other. Nothing good will happen if her name is mixed up in political squabbles. Saphael asked Risen not to get close to the royal family, and said that she was telling her this not as a boss to a subordinate, but as a friend's niece. Risen was sitting at the table at home, preparing a reagent when suddenly there was a knock on the door. It was night outside. She went to the door and asked, "Who?" It was Caden. He was covered in blood. The guy told her not to be scared. The blood was not human but wolf. Risen sent the guy to the bathroom, and he asked her to do an analysis of the reagent that he got. These were the remains of 5 corpses. He apologized to the girl for having to watch this. She was offended because she was a novice investigator in the past. The girl asked if he shouldn't formally submit his request to the pharmaceutical department. He asked her to help him because he was researching it in secret. Risen agreed and went to test the reagent only for simple reactions. And Caden went to the bathroom. When Caden came out of the bathroom in a robe because he didn't have a change of clothes, the girl looked at his toned body. Risen said she tested the reagent for simple reactions, and there is a possibility that the death of 5 people occurred from the same reagent. Analysis of the reagent composition will take some time. The girl said that she would do everything possible if it was related to the Prince William case. The girl said that the analysis would take about 3 hours. In the meantime, he can dry his clothes. But then she noticed his wound. His hand was covered in deep cuts. Risen treated his wound and said that the investigation was quite brutal. And it's good that she didn't go there. Caden replied that going into the pharmaceutical department was a good decision. The girl reminded him how he was indignant at the library that she applied there. He was just worried about her, so that she wouldn't do anything dangerous, although in fact she saw a lot of unpleasant things in her work. Risen joked that she had to choose the investigation department and she would beat it and take first place, and she would be the best in the department. Caden admitted to Risen that when he said she needed to give up Daniel, he didn't know it would turn out like this. After all, now she is lonely. Risen asked if he wasn't lonely. The guy replied that he had a lot to do and had no time to think about such things. There are people who have time. The girl agreed with him, but she hadn't seen him free since high school either. And he said that she would be a good investigator. Risen noticed his gaze on her, the same as in a dream. At such a moment, it seems to her as if she is really dating him. While the girl was preparing hot chocolate for them, Caden fell asleep. She made him comfortable and covered him with a blanket. He looks like he's very tired. It was an unusual feeling, because she had always been alone in this house since her aunt died. Risen liked it so much that there was someone else here. The girl decided not to disturb the guy's sleep, and to do an analysis of the ingredients for now. It can't be. No, the girl repeated several times, covering her mouth with her hand in surprise. When Caden woke up, Risen called him for breakfast. The guy apologized for causing her a lot of trouble. Risen assumed that he was already late for work. Caden responded that the department does not have a set timetable for investigations. Then the girl admitted that no one had ever visited her since her aunt's death. Then the guy scolded her for opening the door to strangers at night. He added that he could, but the rest do not know how to restrain their desires, like him. Risen decided to switch to work and told Caden that she found the same component in the blood of all 5. If they died because of the reagent, then it's the same thing. The guy expected this. Risen asked why he was investigating the deaths of these people, and he replied that it was better for her not to know this. And this is his personal investigation, without her participation. Then Risen continued that these are all the remains of different people, differing in gender and age. Only she thinks that they were wizards, and that magical power remained in their remains. The girl, of course, was offended that he didn't say anything, and she asked how she could carry out further tests if she asked to do it without explaining anything. Caden explained that this case could be very dangerous, so he did not want to involve her in it. Moreover, it still has nothing to do with her, and Risen said she had a connection. After all, the reagent that she found in all 5 of them. She didn't finish and asked again what he was investigating. The guy replied that he couldn't trust anyone, and although he asked her to do an analysis, he cannot tell her everything about this case. Then Risen asked if he had any idea what kind of person could make this reagent. Can he at least tell her this? Caden replied that this man had killed 5 people and was avoiding prying eyes. This must be a terrible and cruel person. After all, murder with the help of drugs is a cowardly and planned crime, compared to murder committed with a knife. That's what Risen thought. If you asked 100 pharmacists about the analysis of these ingredients, all 100 would come to the conclusion that this is an absurd combination, and they would have concluded that the murder was not with the help of a reagent. It contains very unusual ingredients that are not used in standard reagent production methods. Risen wasn't sure about the others, but she only knew one person in this world who could think of such a combination of ingredients. The composition of this reagent is often found in Aunt Layla's research, but she was not that kind of person. And it's not because she's her aunt. Why would she kill wizards who have nothing to do with her? In terms of research ethics, she is as honest as Professor Saphael. Caden replied that while in the investigation department, he realized that there is no such thing as, he really is that kind of person. It is impossible to fully know and understand another person. Therefore, Risen once again asked him to tell him what kind of case he was investigating. If her aunt did something bad, then it was her job to expose it. But what if she is falsely accused? After all, everything points to her. But since she has already died, she will not be able to attend the trial and justify herself. Caden gave in and told her that 6 years ago there was a fire at a banquet in the Western Palace. The queen at the time was Daniel and William's mother, Queen Susanna. She and more than 100 Western lords died in that fire. Risen knew about this. But he continued that isn't it surprising that the new palace caught fire so quickly and was not extinguished? There is a very high probability of using magic, but with its help it is impossible to create such a fire. This will require a large number of wizards, and that would definitely create problems. Therefore, the investigation has reached a dead end, and the late king then ordered the investigation to be stopped for the sake of Queen Testi. Caden said that his parents died there among the lords, and therefore he came to the capital to investigate this matter himself, as he was very upset and angry. And then he met Daniel. No matter how Caden tried to look at this matter without prejudice, for him the conclusions were obvious. With the help of this fire, Testi took the place of queen and pushed Reuben to become second in line to the throne. If not for this, Reuben would not have pushed Daniel back in line. They also won over the aristocrats to their side, many now for Reuben. The investigation department has information that they were involved in the elimination of William. Caden believed that Testi and possibly Reuben were to blame for the fire. But the main rule of the investigation department is not to build rash hypotheses. But in his opinion, everything is obvious here. Caden was outraged that in order to become king, he did this to more than 100 innocent people. Such a cruel king simply cannot rule. Therefore, Caden believed that he was obliged to solve this case and force the perpetrators to suffer a fair punishment.